Hey, so for my final paper, I ended up writing about something that really stuck with me throughout the course. Essentially, this was like this tension between the imagined future of AI and the reality of what AI is doing right now. And early on, I was actually tempted to write about super intelligence. It's a flashy topic, and you have people like Nick Bostrom warning about this intelligence explosion, and where an AI could become smarter than humans and potentially take over. And Ben Goertzel paints this future where we're working alongside, hyper intelligent AIs, and I thought that was, kind of cool stuff to think about. And I do see the philosophical importance, but something about it just wasn't sitting right with me. So I think it was when I read Metcalfe, Moss, and Dana Boyd that some of the things clicked to describe the superintelligence debate as science fiction ethics, and that phrase really made me stop. I started realizing how that kind of speculative thinking can actually distract from the real harms AI is already causing, and not just in niche cases. This is stuff happening in hiring, policing, healthcare, even credit scores, and real people are being denied opportunities or treated unfairly based on systems that can't even see or challenge. That was when I decided, okay, I'm not going to focus on the future, but I'm going to talk more about the present. And honestly, the more I dug into it, the more I realized how urgent that focus is. So, one of the hardest things for me to wrap my head around was algorithmic opacity. I'd heard this term, black box AI before, but I didn't fully understand the different reasons that, these systems are so hard to interpret. But, Jenna Burrell breaks it down into, three kinds: intentional secrecy, technical complexity, and users just not having the background to understand the model. So, that really reframed it for me. This isn't just about engineers needing better tools, but this is about who gets to understand and challenge decisions that affect their lives, right? So it's a question of power and access to knowledge. So this led me into thinking more deeply about bias and inequality. I came across Abiba Birhani's work on relational ethics, and it honestly challenged how I was approaching this topic. I've been thinking in terms of individual decisions, like how do we make a fair AI system, but Birhani flips that by saying ethics is never isolated; it's shaped by relationships, histories, and social contexts. So that helped me understand why algorithmic bias is so persistent. It's not just a technical bug; it's something that gets baked in front of the assumptions and worldviews of people building these systems. And furthermore, also, I'm talking about Ruha Benjamin. She added a whole another layer to that. She warns about this thing called the illusion of fairness, where AI systems might, look neutral or objective since they use, math or algorithms, but in practice they can, actually cause a lot of social injustice. I remember reading that and thinking, wow, that happens a lot more than we realize, and it made me much more skeptical, or, while tweaking data sets or adjusting the fairness metrics. So around this time, I also started looking into how companies are responding to AI ethics concerns. At first, I thought ethics boards and corporate guidelines were a step in the right direction, but Metcalfe, Moss, and Boyd argue that these efforts are often just about avoiding regulation and protecting company interests. This was surprising to me since I hadn't thought of ethics as something that could be co-opted for PR, but now I see how um, how ethics can lose its meaning when it's controlled by, the very institutions that are being critiqued, right? It raises a lot of questions about accountability and who gets to define what's ethical in the first place. And then another thing that surprised me was how useful Andy Clark and David Chalmers' theory of the extended mind turned out to be. I almost didn't include it because I thought it was too abstract, but then I started thinking, if what if AI isn't just something external to us? What if it's becoming a part of how we think, how we process information, and even how we make decisions? And that blew my mind a little. If you're constantly using Google or recommendation algorithms, they're essentially trying to shape your thinking, and it's not the other way around, right? So ethical responsibility isn't just about AI harming people from the outside. It's how AI becomes part of our minds, and I feel like this is a super deep philosophical point. So yeah, so like putting it all together, my main takeaway is that we need to shift focus, not to ignore the future completely, but to really pay attention to the present, right? These systems are already changing our lives, often in invisible, unequal, and accountable ways, and we can't build a better future with AI unless we deal with those problems now. So this project made me see AI in a much more grounded way, not as a mysterious force in the distance, but as something deeply embedded in our daily lives, and, shaped by people, politics, and power. I think philosophy has a lot to offer here, not just in theory, but in helping us ask questions about how we live with technology and how we hold it accountable. So yeah, thank you for listening.